Okay, we, in the previous video, had kind of introduced you a little bit here to scatter plots, how to go through all those things on your calculator to create a scatter plot, how to run a linear regression on your calculator, where it gives you the equation for the line of best fit. Then you can go in the table and kind of answer some prediction problems, as well as it gives you the R value, which is known as the correlation coefficient. Okay, the R value is the correlation coefficient. So if a problem asks you for the correlation coefficient, that's the R value. And if it asks you to describe that, which it almost always wants that, you're either going to say whether it's positive or negative, and then you're going to use that chart that was on yesterday's notes page to categorize it by strength. Okay, so we're just going to go through one more example here today, just to kind of, the only way to get good at this is to kind of keep going through the practice of kind of doing this on your calculator. So here we have a table. It says it shows the percent of sales that were made in music stores in the United States from the period 1999 all the way up to 2008. Particularly when a problem gives you years, you always want to make sure that you're reading further down into part A so that it's not doing something like yesterday's example did, where it said, let the years be the years since a certain year, and then you got to kind of recalibrate what all of those X values are representing here. Okay, so for this particular problem, it doesn't say anything like that. Let the years be the number of years since a certain date. So these years are going to be the X values, which that's what we're going to put in L1 in the calculator. And the percentages of sales, that is going to be what we're going to type into L2. Okay, we're asked to do three things here for part A. The first one is to make a scatter plot on the calculator. Okay, so hopefully from practicing some of these problems on yesterday's assignment, you're a little bit more comfortable with where to go for this. Okay, the first step is we've got to put this information into the calculator. Okay, so I want you to think about where you go on your calculator to input this information. Okay, to find the lists, you're pressing the black stat key, and then you're going to pick option 1 for edit. Okay, this particular notes page, I don't have all the key presses on it, but you can look back at the previous notes page. It tells you exactly what to do and press to make a scatter plot on your calculator. Okay, you probably have old data from a previous homework problem in L1 and L2. So if you recall, the way to clear out your list is to move the cursor on top of L1, press the clear button followed by the down arrow, and it will erase the column for you. Okay, I have already inputted the data into L1 and L2, so you may need to pause this video to give you a chance to put all of the data into the calculator. So go ahead and do that. Okay, I would also just warn you that be careful from typing in the data too quickly. Always make sure you go back and double check. You make one small mistake, accidentally pressing a wrong number or leaving a decimal point out, it will give you a completely different equation for the line of best fit because one of your points is in an incorrect location. Okay, so we have the data in here. The second thing we're going to do is we need to make sure our scatter plot is turned on. We're pressing second and stat plot. Now, your scatter plot should stay on unless you go in and manually turn it off. So if you have it on from yesterday's lesson, it's probably still on. Okay, you want to make sure the correct type is selected, and you want across from your X list L1 and across from where it says the Y list L2. Okay. Now, before I hit the graph button, there's a couple things that you really need to do. I want you to think about what you think maybe some of those things could be. Okay. One of those is you've got to adjust your window. Okay. If you just hit graph right now, you're likely to not see any points or maybe just one point in your scatter plot. So if you ever hit graph and think, I can't find my scatter plot, you probably forgot to readjust your window. Okay, we're going to go across here. I'm looking at the smallest year we entered was 1999. So I'm just going to go a few years below 99 and a few years above 2008. I'm going to go to 2010 and I'm going to count by twos. Okay, my smallest Y value was a 30, so I'm going to go a few below that and say 28 will be my Y min. The largest Y value was 44.5, so I'll make my Y max 46, and I'll just count by fives there, okay? There is one other thing that you really need to get in the habit of doing before you press the graph button, okay? And that is going into the Y equals screen and clearing out any old equations for lines of best fit that don't have anything to do with this problem that you're working on. Otherwise, you're gonna have a nice scatter plot and then you're gonna see a weird line going through it and you might mistake that line for your line of best fit. So let's clear that out. Okay, we're gonna hit the graph button, and here we can see if this was the only thing we had to look at, definitely feels like these two variables have a negative correlation. So as the year maybe is going up, then that is causing like the store's music sales seem to be kind of dropping somewhat. Okay, and this might have to do with maybe things were streamed more, music stores were kind of starting to go by the wayside a little bit by 2008 there. Okay, so here's our scatter plot. You're never going to probably have to like put that down on your paper, but you do want to be able to create one on the calculator. Okay, the other part to this problem then is asking us to come up with a line of best fit. So we want the equation y equals mx plus b for the line that best fits kind of the trend of this data. Okay, so if we were to go back to the calculator, I'm going to press second and quit. If you think about what these key presses are, and again, these key presses are on yesterday's notes page, you're going to press that black stat key, but you're going to bump over to that calculate menu, and you're going to pick option number 4, Lin regression. Okay, option number 4. Okay, this is where, depending on your calculator, it could look one of two ways. This is the newer calculator. You do want to tell it that your x's are in L1 and that your y's are in L2. Okay, older calculators, this is where you would say L1 comma, L2 comma. You would get L1 by hitting second and the number 1, and here's the comma key. Okay. Now after you do L1 comma, L2 comma, don't hit enter. You have to put the y1 variable there so that the calculator will store the regression equation into y1 for you. Very important, okay? So think about that. Where do we find the y1 variable on the calculator? Well, you press the vars button, that's short for variable. Okay, you want to bump to the right to the y variable menu. Okay, you're going to press 1 for function, and then right there is 1 for y1. Come on down to calculate, hit enter. You're going to round the a and b to 2 decimal places for the purposes of writing it on your paper. Okay, so you're going to fill that into your equation, and then you're also going to round the r value to 2 places. Okay, so you'll notice the a and b value are much longer than 2 places. Okay, I'm not going to have you write out all those digits on your paper, but we really want all of those digits to be what's stored in y1. So when you start rounding numbers and then you use a rounded equation to do a prediction, now your answer's off a little bit. Okay, that's why it's so important that you're telling the calculator to store the equation in y1. I'm just going to go ahead and tap here. If I go to y1, you can see how the calculator is keeping that entire number there, which makes our predictions when we go into the table much more accurate. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write down, oops, I lost it here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and write down our equation for the line of best fit, which would be y equals negative 1.44, that would be the a, which is our m, to 2 places, x plus 2,926.68. Also, the correlation coefficient, that's the r value, in this problem, it was negative. Now remember when we looked at the scatter plot and we kind of said, oh, that was sort of leaning in the direction of a negative slope line? That jives with this also being negative. Those are both in agreement with each other. Okay, so when it says to describe the correlation, we need to choose 2 adjectives. One adjective is either positive or negative. We're going to go with negative on this. And then 0.84, we want to look at our chart on yesterday's notes page and say, where does 0.84 fall? That falls into the strength category of being fairly strong. Okay, fairly strong. Okay, so that means our predictions are probably fairly accurate. Okay, let's see if we can do a prediction here. We want to predict what's going to be the percentage of the sales all the way in the year 2018. Okay, so I'm going to go into the calculator here. Okay, into the calculator. Okay, remember the table is where all the points are that are on the line. Okay, we can jump to where we want to be in the table though if you go to table setup first. Choose the year 2018 to start the table out at, then go into second graph, And right across from there, it will tell you, yes, it does appear that this business is failing because their sales are only about 15.87%. So they're definitely declining here. Okay, so we're going to write down the percent of sales is 15.87%. Okay. Now I'm going to give you. Here's part C here. Okay. Sometimes they ask you to do a prediction problem, but instead of giving you the X value and asking you to predict the Y, they give you the Y and they ask you to predict the X. Okay, here's how this would work. It says predict the year when the sales percent will drop just below 25%. Okay, so we're looking for when do the Y values just fall under the 25% mark. Okay, now here's the flaw, or I guess the restriction of the way the calculator works. When you go into table setup, you can only start your table out at an X value. You cannot choose to start it out at a Y value. You are at the mercy if they give you the Y value, which is what they gave us here in this problem, 25%, of just going into the table, and you're going to, I think I have to move my cursor over here to this first column. You're going to scroll, but I'm looking at the percent in the Y column. I'm waiting until I see that Y column dip just under 25%. Okay, it looks like right there when it says 24.519, there the percentage has just dropped below 25%. What year did that happen? Oh, I see. That happened in the year 2012. Okay. A lot of times when they give you the Y value, you do not find that exact value over here. So a lot of times there's like two acceptable answers. In this case, the answer would be the year 2012 for sure. Okay, so I'm going to write down the year 2012. Okay, and then finally it says here, use the correlation to state how accurate your prediction is. Okay, and since we said that it was fairly strong, we're going to say that we feel like our predictions here are fairly, or that's a C here, fairly accurate. Okay. Same stuff that we did yesterday, just wanted to go through another one here with you. Okay, you can see that your assignment here is to do worksheet 2.5A.